Sciences. I work on all of our websites, but I also do everything from our digital signage to anything on any of our websites. I used to help with all of our social media accounts and anything else that we really need print-wise as far as publications go for the college or for e-tech specifically, which is the department of the dean's office that I work in. Just a little bit of my background as to why I'm doing an InDesign workshop when I work mainly in web is I graduated from the university here in 2013 with an advertising and graphic design dual degree. And I started working at the Tuscaloosa News. So I worked in print newspaper ad design for about 4 years. And then I got promoted to team lead and then eventually operations manager over our Tuscaloosa, Chicago, and New York divisions for the design, graphic design portion of all of our newspapers that we had across the country. And then I just decided I wanted something different. And so I came to UA, and it's been a great change getting back into the design world. But something that I've noticed a lot is that a lot of people don't know a lot about InDesign. Photoshop, I think, is the main tool so many people know about because you can do anything from photos to designing. But InDesign is a really good tool, and it's very simple once you get into the basics of it for making anything from your classic study group poster, which is something that we'll be doing today, to invitations for anything personal and anything in between. I do want to preface this with I am not an expert on InDesign or Adobe. I've worked in them for so long that I have a pretty good grasp. And something else to kind of keep in mind as we go along with this is that everyone does what they do differently. So whether it's keyboard shortcuts, whether it's working with the actual tools with your mouse, whether it's layers or not layers, everyone does what they do differently. We're all kind of as designers or as professionals who need to design stuff from here and there, we're all self-taught. And so if there's something that you do differently from me, I would love for you to, speak up and say something, and maybe it'll help all of us find new tools and tricks and ways to do things. So that's just a little bit of a preface, but I'm going to go ahead and get started. And so I'm going to start with us basically just opening the tool. You can follow along on your computer if you want, or you can just watch along. Either way, it's up to you what your comfort level is with the program. I'm going to go over a lot of the basics today. I'm not going to go into depth a lot of things as far as pages or style templates, things like that. I think we're going to do a session on that later on. And I think OIT might have a session or two digging deeper into a couple things as well, again, later. But today is just, I am basing today's presentation on you guys are new to the tool, or you just need a refresher of the basics of things you need to know as far as tools go. We'll be going over layers, links, your view display performances, placing images into boxes, text around things. So yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and get started and share my screen. All right, there we go. Okay, so opening InDesign. This is going to be the page that you come on. The really cool thing that I like about InDesign is that when you're creating something new, you can choose amongst their, so we'll hit create new, obviously. You can choose amongst their print sizes that they have. You can go to web, you can do mobile design. Obviously today we're sticking with the print side. And you can view all of their presets that they already have. For the purpose of today, we're doing a poster. So your typical poster sizes are going to be like an 11 by 17, which is this tablet for like a bulletin poster. 18 by 24 is like a common medium poster size. But for the purpose of today, we're going to be doing the 11 by 17. Something else that I really like about InDesign in comparison to other Adobe products is that the color is automatically assigned. And so if you're not sure what I'm talking about with that, CMYK versus RGB. CMYK is what you always want to use when you're printing materials. And the thing about InDesign that I like is there is no wrong way to design something, because however you have it set up is how the colors will be formatted for you within the product. And so sometimes if you're designing something in Photoshop, you have to go up and change the color profile to CMYK from RGB to print. This does everything for you. So if we click on tabloid 11 by 17, you'll be able to see everything over here. Your first things that you'll want to look at is your orientation. Are we wanting to do a portrait mode poster or a landscape mode? For today's purpose, we'll do a portrait, but I'll also show you how you can change that within if you decide once you get into the design you want to change something. Pages. This is where you can add your pages. Facing pages is typically if you're wanting to see a spread, which again, we'll do all this in a later session. For today's design, we're only doing one page, so that's going to stay at 1. Your columns and gutter, we're going to just stay at 1 column, and we can create columns within the text fields if we want. Margins, you can leave these at 0.5. That is mainly for print pages. And so if you're printing like a book or something like that, you'll want to keep those margins to make sure that things don't get cut off. For today's poster, we are going to want everything to go to the edge as far as the picture and everything goes, but I'm going to go ahead and keep these margins on just to make sure my text stays within that space. Bleed. When we get down to bleed, most printers, if you're printing a poster, need a bleed of 0.125 inches. And what I mean by bleed is it's basically if you want your color background or your image background on any kind of design to go off the page when it's printed and to go all the way to the edge, you'll want to create a bleed within your document. For the purpose of this, all you have to do, if you keep on this linked thing, you'll just press the up arrow and it'll immediately go to 0.125, which again is the minimum that most printers need for a bleed. You will not be able to see this once it prints, which is great because the printer will have that extra space to be able to cut it off, but it also means don't put text or anything to the very edge of your design, because that space is basically a safe space for the printer to be able to crop your design for you. And then all we're going to do now is we're going to hit create. So we're going to go ahead and open up InDesign. And as you can see, this red line that's around the edge, that's our bleed. So it goes off of the white space, which the white space is your page, basically. This goes off just to show you, hey, we've given you a little extra wiggle room, and that way you don't have to worry about things not going all the way to the edge. This is my margin that I kept, which is the 0.5 inches. I want to keep all of my text within that area. Again, printers are not perfect. We do depend on them, and most printing services, especially UA printing, does a really good job of making sure to stay within the bounds of your document. But sometimes setups may get changed when it goes to the printers, and so you always want to give yourself a little bit of space where you don't want things getting cut off. So first, I'm going to start with, this is what InDesign looks like when you get into it. When I'm referring to the menu bar, I'm referring to this up here. So it's InDesign, File, Edit, Layout, Type, Object, Table, View, Window, and Help. That's going to be your menu bar. It's the same as your computer menu bar that you would use. And this has a lot of really good things in it. They're just not the tools that are displayed within the InDesign window. When I'm referring to the control panel, I'm referring to either this space up here on top or your specific tools that you have put on your side panel on your right side. So it's either on the right side of your screen or on the top, or both, is your control panel. Your tools bar is this little nifty thing that's on the left, but it can move. It can move either transient, you can move it around your space. I know some people that move it closer to what they're working on. You can move it over to the right if you want. I prefer just to keep mine on the left, and you'll see that little blue bar that helps it snap back into place, just so that I have everything separated and I know where everything is on my page. The first thing that I'm going to do is just show you basically your workspace. When you open InDesign normally, I'm going to go ahead and reset to my Essentials Classics. Essentials is the workspace that most people will work in. You'll see that there's things as far as digital publishing, book, printing and proofing, typography, interactive or PDF. All of these are really great because they then show the tools that are most used for the purpose of what you're doing. So say you do digital publishing. You'll see over here that the tools completely change from what a normal Essentials Classic InDesign is used for to things such as hyperlinks or buttons. We don't need to worry about that today. We're just going to go to Essentials Classic. And your CC libraries, so if you have your Creative Cloud, which everybody at UA has a Creative Cloud account, if you're a faculty, staff, or student for free, if you have yours logged in and it's linked up to all of your Adobes, you can go on here and search your libraries. If you have downloaded images from Adobe, and I think I have, yes. And so your Adobe stock, if you have different images that you have downloaded from there, because you can either buy them yourself. I don't have any libraries saved, which is why you're seeing that. But this is where a lot of those will then pull in to your InDesign if you want to use those. I don't use it as much, and so I'm just going to go ahead and collapse it for you. So a couple of the things that I want to add over here to my Essentials toolbar, you'll go over to View. No, you won't. You'll go to Window. I'm sorry. And this is where you'll see everything below this breakpoint are all tools that you can add to that bar. So some important things that I like to have on mine, for instance, over here in the color area, I like to go ahead and just add my gradient, just in case I want to have gradient. So I'll add that, and you'll see when you pull the black bar over, you'll see the blue, it'll snap in to your toolbar. And so I've got stroke, gradient, color. Those are all swatches as another color. So I keep mine separated. Designer habit, just to have everything super organized, is to have everything organized by your category. So that's all color. Then I'm going to go down to text. I want to add text wrap because that is something important with a print design or any kind of design, is being able to move your text around images. So I'm going to add this to a new section. Type in tools. Paragraph is usually a good one to add because it's where you can see a lot of the panel, the control stuff that you'll see up here will also be on the side, so it's easily accessible. Some of this can be redundant with the bar up top, but I think it's good to have in both places in case you want to go ahead and just have it popped out like this to go back and forth between text wrap and paragraph. I'm going to add character. And I think, oh, the last one is effects. I'm going to go ahead and add. And that basically is, you can adjust your opacity. You can go down here and add drop shadows, gradient feathers, things like that, that I think everyone traditionally likes to add to give a little oomph to your typography. It's good to just have that readily available. So this is now what my control panel looks like. I'm going to do a little basic introduction to the tools, but I think it's more important for you to see them in action so that you know what they actually do. So let's start off with, obviously this is your selection tool. So this is how you'll move everything on the page once you have things on the page. Your direct selection tool, is if you're wanting to select just a specific corner on a box and move it. But mainly over here, what I'm going to show you is you'll see that there's these little white arrows on some of the boxes as opposed to others. If you click on that, that'll show you that there are other tools underneath that layer. And this little square will show you what tool is visible on top. And so obviously there's only 2 right there, but when you come down here to rectangle frame, there's 3 of them. On your pen tool, you'll have 4 different ones. And so it's helpful to be able to show you what other options you have with a specific tool, but also what you're seeing currently. So, another way, I know we had spoken, or I had said earlier in the setup that, we chose portrait mode, but over here, just to give a little brief into these, when you go to pages, for instance, this is where you can see this is my first page. Do you remember how I said facing pages for multiple? Say I wanted to add more pages. This is what facing pages means basically, is it shows you that it's a spread instead of just individual pages that would be printed like an annual report would be or something. This is more of a book layout. So for the purpose of this, again, pages isn't as important. Your layers panel is the same as any other tool in the Adobe suite. So this is where you'll be able to see your background image, you'll be able to see your text layers, and you can move them within. You can create new layers to turn off and on. This is where it gets into a preference thing. I typically just work under one layer, and with the little drop down, I can see what all my layers are. Some people like working in more grouped layers where your text is all on layer number 2 and your images are on layer number 1. There is no real wrong answer to that. It is, again, completely preference up to you. Let's see. We had talked about the page orientation, so I'll show you that really quickly. If you were to get into this and you were to say, you know what, actually, I want to do a landscape poster, you would go up to File, you would go down to Adjust Layout, and this is where you can see everything about your page. You can switch over to Landscape, hit OK. I'm going to just do Undo Adjust because I want to stay where we are. But that's another way. Again, if you don't have everything figured out at first when you're creating this, you can make changes once you're in the file. So let's go ahead and get started. I am going to, so today we're going to be creating a mock poster for an economics study group, say. So I'm going to grab my rectangle frame tool. So I'm using the frame tool because I'm going to be putting an image into the background of this. If I wanted to do just a solid color background, I would choose the rectangle tool because you can see it's solid and so it could have a solid color. Now, the frame tool can as well, but the point of a frame tool is to put something into it. So I'm just going to follow my red line. And the cool part is you'll be able to see these all snap into place once they hit certain lines. So I'm going to do that. And then there are a couple ways that you can place an image. The first way, which is the way that most people, if you're just working off of your desktop or you have a bunch of different things, is you can grab an image from your desktop, from a folder, and just drag and drop it. And that's a pretty easy way to do it. I'm going to go backwards. Another way would be to go to Edit. What is it? That didn't work. Sorry, guys. Wait, where did it go? Okay, there it is. Place. And then you can open it and you can place it from there. Either way is fine. Again, to me, drag and drop is just so much easier, pulling it from your desktop or from a folder. As you can see, once we've opened it, it doesn't really fit in the space. Some people may do the double click and have to sit there and resize the image down. Unnecessary. What you can do is you can right click on the box. Once you have the image selected, you can right click on the box, hit fitting, and fill frame proportionately. So again, I'll do that again just so you guys can see. I have the box, the frame selected. I'm going to double click inside the frame till you see the hand tool, and that means that the image is selected. I'm going to right click, go to fitting, and fill frame proportionally. You can also do fit content proportionally, which means that the content would fit within it, but it wouldn't necessarily. So you can see how it's cut off at the top, and so it doesn't go all the way to the bleed. And so that's why fill frame proportionately will just fill the image to the height or width, whichever is larger of the frame, so that it fits the entire bleed space. So now we have our background image. Obviously, this image is it's aesthetically pleasing, but text on top of it will probably get complicated. So we are then going to create a white transparent box on top of a portion of the photo so you can still see the photo, but so that text can lay on top of it. So I'm going to go over and select my rectangle tool, and I'm just going to simply draw a rectangle. I'm not worried right now about proportions to the page. I'm just going to create it. I'm going to go over to my swatches panel, or you can go up here. And this is where you'll see right now, this box does not have any color assigned to it or a stroke. A stroke, for those of you who do not know, is basically a frame. So you can see now I've added a stroke, which is just the edge of the image or the edge of the box. I want to go back to none because I don't want that. I'm going to go to the fill again, either up here, or you can go over here. And I'm going to select paper, which is white on InDesign. As far as this goes, again, I just drew the box wherever. The great part about that is over here, you'll see up here where you can align. What I always want to make sure that everybody understands is that this align, you can align it, again, if you have two different pages that are facing each other, that's a spread. You can align to page. Align to selection, I'll show you in a little bit, but it's basically if you have multiple items selected on the design, you can just align those together. It won't then center it within the whole page if you don't want that. So I'm going to align to page, and I'm going to do align horizontal centers so that it's in the center of the page. And I'm going to also do align vertical centers. That's the easy fix to do it. Another way, again, a reason why I love InDesign is if I start moving this, you see that pink line that shows up? That pink line is showing you that what your selection is now centered within the page. If I move it down, you'll now see that it's at a cross point. That shows you that is the very center point of the page is lined up with the center point of your selection. So whether you like doing things manually or if you want to do it up here, you can. If you were to do align left edge, it would align to the left of the page. Again, the page and the bleed are not the same. And so something that I have had people run into is, well, it's not aligning with the edge of all of the images on the page. Some of your images are running off the page. So this is only going to align with where the printer is going to cut, which is good for you. But just don't look at things outside of the actual page lines as, well, I want everything to align to that, because it's not going to. So we're going to go back. We're going to center this. This is where my effects panel comes into play, or up here. Again, there's two different ways to do everything. I like having both options because I typically work off this side, but right now, the opacity, which is the transparency of, is it a solid white box or is it somewhat see-through, is 100%. I don't really want that because I want you to be able to see some of the image, but I still want it to be white enough that dark text can go on top of it and not worry about competing with the background. So I'm going to go to about 80, just see. Okay, I think that's about good. I may bump it up to 85 depending on the text. But again, you see how it changed right here? It also changed up here. So this is just showing you, you can do it either way. If you would like to do a slider so you can visibly see how transparent something is over something else, that works fine too. Just make sure that you're stopping on something that's like an 85 instead of like an 82, because if you want to have that same transparency on other things, you don't want to have to keep going back and checking and saying, was it 73 on this one? Was it 61 on that? So sticking to a specific, either in increments of 5 or 10 number, it's typically easier to remember. But it's completely up to your design, what you think looks good. Okay, so I'm going to click off of that. I think it looks pretty good. So I'm now going to grab my type tool and we're going to start adding type. This is where you'll want to pay attention to the square check mark box around the type tool cursor, because if I move it, say, into here, you see how that just went to round instead of being square? If I were to click to start typing or to start a text box, it would then put my text inside of this white box, like align it to the white box. So see how it now is in line with the top of that. I want my text to be a completely separate layer. So I'm going to go up to edit, undo typing. Edit, undo typing. Edit, undo, create text frame. Another way, if you like keyboard shortcuts, is Command Z will go back to the previous step. And so if sometimes you see something happening that you're not seeing on the screen, I have a tendency to do that without thinking about it. I just want you to know Command Z will go backwards in a step as well. So let's click on our text tool again. So we want to make sure that we have our square around it to be able to create a text frame. All right, that seems like an ample amount of space. You don't want to have to worry about this the same as you do in, say, Photoshop or Illustrator, where it's hard to adjust a text frame box because it then adjusts the size of the text within it. Text frames in InDesign do not work that way. You can, once you add text to this, you can adjust the text box space that it's in to fit just the text so that you can easily align things. So we're going to start with the word economics. And then I'm going to select my text, go up here. This is where, again, you can look at either over here at the character, or you can look up here. So say I want to do, let's do this font. That looks economics type. Like, I'm not at all a business person, so apologies for not knowing much about the subject. Okay, so you can, I'll go back actually. So you can see once I did that, I then changed the size of my font so that I could see it down to 72, just so that I could see it at the moment. After I did that, obviously the word is now cut off. You'll see this little red plus sign that shows you on anything that you put on here that there is something on within the box that is not visible. So you can either drag your text box to then fit it. If, say, it's text that you want to bring down to a different text box, we can show you how to do that in a minute as far as it'll continue into a new box. But for the purpose of this, I want the word economics to completely show up, so I'm going to do that. How I had said earlier, typically when you resize a text box in, say, Photoshop or Illustrator, it then distorts the text within it, and here it does not. the text is completely separate from the box around it. So you can get your cursor to where you see the diagonal, double click, and it'll now fit your text frame to the text that's on your page. The reason why I do this is if I were to go up here and click align horizontal, it now does that. Say this text box was still huge and you go to align, it's going to align the entire text box, not just what you want to align. So we want, most times in InDesign, you want your text boxes to fit that space. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go back to center. Okay, this looks okay at the moment. Something that I don't love is just the letters seem so close together. So I'm going to give myself a little bit of space and I'm going to double click on it, select my text. Over here in character, we have this right here, which is the spacing between your letters. I'm going to go ahead and just bump it up to 25 just for fun. Let's go up to maybe just to show you what's happening. I'll go to 100. So you see how everything kind of spaces out. This is more of a design preference. It's not necessarily for readability because you can read the word economics how it was. This is more of just for the style of this poster, for the purpose of it, I want it to have a little bit of breathing room. That is a lot of breathing room. So I'm going to go down to about 75. I think that's fine. So now I'm going to go back to my selection tool, which is how you can grab anything on the page. And I'm going to go back to my cursor and I'm going to make that fit the page. And you can see I hit the center button, so it got centered. I don't necessarily want that centered. I just did it to see where my bearings were. So now I'm going to move it back up. Okay, perfect. So my second line of text, I know I want to do it in a different font and font style. So I'm going to create a new text box for that. You don't have to if you had known that the same type you want to use for economics, you want to use for the word study group. You can pull this down and do study group. That's fine too. I just know that the style, I want it to be different. And so I'm going to create a whole new text box so that it does not mess with our word that we already have. So I'm going to create a new box, new text box, and I'm going to type out study. And I want them on different lines. And so I'm going to hit return group. I'm going to select all that. Again, I'm going to make it 72 just so we can see it for the purpose of this. Then I'm going to go up to my fonts. And I think I'll just go with, let's do Acumen Pro. And then, so below, when you pick a font in InDesign, if the font family has different styles associated with it, that'll be below it. So you can see right now it's on regular. I think I want this to maybe be semi-bold or bold. I'm just going to see what that looks like. Let's see what bold looks like. Let's go back to semi-bold. Okay, so we'll go to semi-bold. Right now, there are multiple words in this on different lines. They're all left aligned. I want them centered. So you don't have to have your text within the box selected. You just have to have the cursor within it. You can go over here, and this is where it'll show you align left, align center, align right. So I'm going to align all of my text centered. That was not supposed to happen. Okay. I'm going to select all my text for the purpose of this. I don't know if there's a setting that's messed up. So you're going to center it within the text box with each other. And then I'm going to move my text box over onto my page just so I can see what it kind of looks like next to economics. Okay. I think I want to make this smaller. So the way to do that within InDesign, again, because the text is separate from the box around it, In Photoshop, you would just select Shift and you could move it. Within InDesign, you need to do Command and Shift. That way, when I am decreasing my text box, I am decreasing everything within it. Now, the other way that you could do this, yes, is to select all of your text, go over here to size and say select 48. And then you could play with the arrows up and down to figure out what size you want text to be. That could take a while for the purpose of your design. So I'm going to go backwards. And I'm just going to select this corner again, and you're going to do Command and Shift if you're on a Mac. If you're not on a Mac, what's Command for not a Mac? Does anybody not use a Mac? Okay. Well, it's whatever.
It's control.
Control. Okay, so it's Control Shift. And you'll hold down, and you can just decrease your size, and you can see I can make this whatever size I want it to be. And I'll just center that. Same with study group. So say I want to make this a lot larger, I can go up. So by the way, it only goes up to 72, but you can type in any font that you want or any font size that you want. So say I want to go up to 100, I can just type that in. That would take a lot of guessing. Obviously, you can use the arrows, you can do whatever, but that is where I want to now do, again, Command Shift, and I can make my text larger. All right. That's about how large I want it. You see how study and group have a large space between them. That's because that's the natural spacing between text lines. I want to fix that. I want to make study and group look like they belong together and a little bit closer together. So over here in character, you'll see this number that's next to the font size automatically adjusts when you adjust font size to be the proportional ratio that InDesign has set up between lines. Now, for paragraphs and stuff, that's great. You want at least 3 to 4 point sizes. For the purpose of this, I feel like this is the word study and the word group are just too far apart. So we can adjust that. You can, again, do this. It only goes up to 72, or you can keep it on auto. You could go down individually, or you could look and say, my font size is 129.5. For larger words like this, my rule is usually go about 3 point sizes bigger and see what that looks like. So let's just go to 133, just for fun. Okay, so you saw how that moved up. Study and group now are closer together. They look like they belong more. I think that's good. I think we'll just leave it at 133. All right, so up here, you had seen how I had adjusted the spacing between letters. I want to have that same look for study group too. So again, I'm going to go over to character. I'm going to go down to here, and I'm going to go to 75. Just because that's what I had done on economics. Again, it's just the look of this poster that I want to go for. That's what I want to do with my letters. So I readjusted the text box. I'm going to center it again underneath economics, give a little bit of space so that the words belong together, but they aren't up against each other, which is another cool thing too, by the way. If you're wanting boxes to touch, you see how when I move that up, the green line showed up. I don't know if you can see it as much. Let me zoom in for you. Okay, so when I move this up, there's a green line that presents itself. That shows you that now your two boxes that you have on the page are touching. They are exactly aligned. So this is a way that you can have color boxes aligning without overlapping. Text, if you wanted it to look like this, you could. Yeah, so I'm going to just move it back down, give it a little bit of space. Okay, so another way, if you zoom in to get back to where you can see your entire file at a glance, how we've been working, is to just double click on the hand tool. That'll always take you back to the outside view where you can see your poster as a whole. So if you're working on little small text spaces for like a QR code or something, you can zoom in on it really good. You can even use your zoom tool to just hold and it'll zoom in a lot. If you click Option on your keyboard, it'll automatically go to the decreasing magnifying glass, so it'll zoom out, or you can just go over here and once you get in enough, it'll go back out. But I would go to Option to automatically switch it. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my hand tool, pull it back out. All right, I think I want a line break in here just to help the poster have a little bit of breakup. So I can either go to my line tool and you can draw a line, and you see how it's not going to automatically be straight. You're going to have to sit here and look at something like this where it's an exact. The key to this is always hold down, shift, then click, and you'll get a straight line every time. Whether it's shift, go down, shift, go sideways, shift, go horizontally, whatever direction you want to go in, it'll go at 45-degree increments if you hold down shift, and you can create a straight line. I'm going to make sure I delete all those so that I don't click on them later. But so I'm going to create a line. So I'm going to go straight line about there. That's fine. Again, if you click off of it, it's not there because there's no color assigned to it. So I'm going to find my line, go up here, and I'm going to go to stroke first, and I'm going to say, I want a black. We'll do a black one. You can create a fill for these if it's going to be super thick, but for most lines, you'll just need a stroke. I'm going to go up to like 3 point. All right. Oh, and so this right here is your stroke depth. So if I was only at 1, you can see how thin that line is. If I go up to 3, you can see it got a little bit thicker. Say we go up to 4. It's even thicker now. And I'm just going to center that on my page. Now, I want to show you really quickly what your line options are. So if you're creating a line, even if you're just creating a box, I'll show you that as well with what this cool tool can do. So your stroke tool, once you've adjusted your lines, you can then change between different pre-loaded design techniques for a box or for a line, anything. So you can do anything from dotted. You can do a straight hash, which is smaller. Now, as I increase my stroke, you'll see that the lines get bigger and a little bit farther apart. So I'm going to go to my line and say I want, what was that? Thick, thin, thick. So it's 3 lines. Okay, let's see what maybe dashed looks like. Say you're creating a coupon, or we've done stuff in eTech where we're creating job flyers, and at the bottom we want to have those tears where you can tear off something at the bottom of a bulletin poster that has our website for how to apply to student jobs if you want to post them throughout campus. This is your line tool you can put between those at the bottom. For the purpose of this, I'm just going to stick with solids, but I wanted to show you guys that because a lot of people, I think, put so much energy into trying to find different designs. A lot of things InDesign has are already preloaded for you, and they're pretty cool what you can do with them. So we're just going to do a solid line under study group. Okay. Our next bit of text that we're going to do, there are 2 ways to do it. This is, again, completely based off of preference, how you want to do it. I want to make it this same text as economics. You can either select Option, and you'll see this double arrow that once I'm hovering over the text box, it shows up. And you can click and it'll create you a new text box that's the same as that if you hit Option Alt. Or I can just create a new text box, type in whatever I want to put in there. I'll type my stuff in a minute, but just say I do that. You can then grab the eyedropper tool, click on economics, and you can either select your text like that. You can have all of your text selected, grab your eyedropper tool, click inside another text box, and it'll copy over that character style to your new text box. So there's multiple ways to do it. It's completely up to you how you want to, whether it's, again, just hitting Option and dragging your text box, and then you can adjust that text box, make it different sizes, but you know it's the exact same style as the one above, or creating you a new text box and then using the eyedropper tool to either select this, sorry, have your text tool selected, to either select this and then you drag to select, or to highlight your text and then eyedropper. Whatever works for you works for me. So I'll just, since I have this text box already, I'll go ahead and type in semester review and in-depth dive into microeconomics. Okay. This is going to be my text. Obviously, you can see it does not fit in the text frame. Something that I want to pinpoint, which is the whole purpose of this too, is to show you that one of the paragraph styles is, see the word microeconomics was cut off because it was too long to fit on that one line. So a hyphen is put in there. The bane of my existence is when multiple paragraphs have hyphens throughout them. So you have to read part of a word and then go down with a hyphen and figure out what the next word is. For readability purposes, it's not as great. There are some purposes where I could see that it would hold merit, but I don't like them. So what I always tell people to do is, you can click inside your text box. You can hit Command A as a way to select all of your text. Go over to paragraph. Down here, you see this word hyphenate and it's checked. If I uncheck it, you see how immediately the MI disappears. And it's because it is now moving that entire word to a whole new line that will not be hyphenated. So it does adjust your text within your text box, but that's something that if you do at the beginning and you have it already unchecked, you won't have to sit there and readjust all of your text. If you have multiple pages of text that's all connected, or if you have a really long paragraph that you had it perfectly fitted and then you click this after the fact, it's always important before you format your text to make sure, if you don't want hyphenated words, that you uncheck this box, because Essentials Classic, then InDesign, will always come pre-checked. And I think it's just to show you, yes, the word is in there, it just doesn't fit on that line. And so if I even were to pull this box down, you can see that the word is on multiple lines because it doesn't fit within the bounds of the box. Can you adjust the box? Sure. But sometimes you can't make a box as wide as a word at this size. So, and you can even see review did it. So I'm just going to hit unhyphenate and it's going to do this. It's going to now show you the word microeconomics does not fit within this text box. That's okay, because we'll make this text smaller. But hyphenate it's a big tool that I feel like you could sit and hit return on words to get to not fit all the time. InDesign does it easily for you. Okay, so first, with this text, I'm going to go ahead and select it. And I'm going to go up and I'm going to make it just a little bit smaller. It's 55 right now. Let's get on to like 36. Just because it's more of our body paragraph text, not our headline, like the economic study group is. And that's something else within a poster to remember, is you want your subjects to hone in on something that is most important to you, like your headline. Everything else is additive information. So don't put everything on a poster in the exact same size and the exact same heading style, color, anything like that. So we'll do this for right now. I'm going to go ahead and do my little thing where I just adjust the box to fit it as much as it can. I want to make this text centered, so I'm going to center it. I'm going to pull it over onto my page. This is the cool part about InDesign as well. I'm going to zoom in on that so you can just see what happened. If you have multiple boxes and you want them all to be the exact amount of space away, InDesign will do it for you. So it'll show you, these green arrows show me that the word group has now the same distance between that line break as the start of my new text box. Great. I don't have to sit there and figure out, okay, the word group is 2 inches above the line, so I need mine to be 2 inches. Let me draw a box that's 2 inches long. InDesign has all of these features already installed into them. Now, you can turn some of these features off. I don't recommend it because, again, it makes your job easier in creating a poster. Okay, so I have centered that. I have moved it down below the word or below the line. It's exactly in the same. Now I'm going to hit my magnifying tool and just back out a little bit. I don't want to hit the hand tool because I don't want to go all the way out for you. I just want to go a little bit. All right. This is where what I showed you earlier as far as the option key comes into play. I want this same line down here below. Again, I can draw this line again with the line tool, go to 4-point, do it on the stroke, or I can just hit my option key. You'll see that I do not have my hand on the mouse. As long as you're hovering over something, you'll see that it has that 2 lines, and then I'm just going to pull it down. And those green lines have popped up again to show me that this new line is the same distance. I'll zoom in and show you that again. All right, I've clicked on it, clicked option, and now I'm going to press down on my mouse key and pull. And you will see those green lines have popped up to show me the exact same distances between both. Perfect. And I'm going to back out. All right, now I want to do the date in, say, this same font again. We can then either do option, pull down, or I can create a new text box, whichever. For the purpose of this, I'm just going to click option, pull down study group. Then I'm going to retype in March 4th, separator, 3 p.m. It's not in the text box because it's too large. Let's just go up here and go back down to 72. I know I want it smaller anyway. So let's go to like 60. That's still a little large. We'll go down to 48. That looks about good. I may go down a little bit, but I don't want to go down to 36. So I'll just go down to, say, 43. Okay. All right, so I've got my date in there. This is another cool part about the character. So when you put in, which it is above the return key, if you hit shift and it's that backslash, that's where you'll get this line divider. You can see that it's a little bit further down below. I want it completely centered with the text. So I'm going to highlight it. I'm going to go over here, and that's where you'll see this. This tool right here moves the position of a single letter up off of the baseline of all the text. So I'm going to go up, go up. I'm just going to keep watching it until it's about centered. About there. Okay, so 4 points. It's about centered now within the text. I think that works. I want to keep the same spacing as I did in study group. If I didn't, again, I could go to pair or to character And I could take my text spacing back down to 0, and you can see it goes back to how the text is originally formatted. I want the airiness within this poster just because, so I'm going to keep it at 75. All right. And then because I want to make sure that I'm getting everything, all of the text fitted within, I'm going to just make it the text box the same as the text and then center it. Okay. All right. Below this, I want to do a similar line, but maybe a little bit smaller. So I'm going to select my line, hit Option, pull it down till it's the same distance. And then I'm just going to decrease the size to maybe 3. And then I don't want it to be the same width. I want to kind of change it up a little for this line divider. So you can see when you go over to one of these white bounding boxes on each side, it's similar to if you had a square, like these rectangles, how each 4 corners on a line, you only have 2 sides. So I'm going to grab one side and I'm just going to pull it back, make it a little bit shorter. Then I'm going to go up here again to my center tool with align to page, and I'm going to center it. All right. And just for the purpose of trying to get through some of this real quick, I'm going to pull this down. The last little bit of text is 200. I don't want that capitalized. So Alston Hall, Dr. Let's do Smith. Okay. So I'm going to select on my text. I'm going to bring this down to like 24. And then I'm going to just, and you can do it like this, or you can just center it with the page. I'm going to make sure that it is the same distance. It is. All right. This, I think, needs to be a little bit smaller, I'll be honest. I'm going to bring it down to 30. Okay. With that, you can see that now the spaces are not the same. Say I want to keep this exact same distance, then I can just move everything up one at a time, wait till I get my green bars. But say I look at it after I zoom back out and I say, oh, everything just feels so clumped in the middle. I kind of want economics to move up a little bit. And then I like where this is, but now I need everything within it to feel aligned. You can select everything on your page and you can go up here and beside these, there we go. Okay. You'll see that there is a space that you can distribute the vertical centers. I have it aligned to page. This is where it comes into line selection. So you'll go to align selection because you only want to move what is selected. So I'm going to align my selection. Then I'm just going to go to distribute vertical centers. Okay. Do you see what this does? What this does is it's now saying the center of every box is now evenly distributed. That obviously isn't going to work with what we got. So let's try distribute top edges. What I'm doing is I'm showing you these are all options within the tool. You can distribute bottom edges. So it'll take the bottom edge of everything that you have and evenly distribute it. I want to go back real quick just to show you. Within selection as well, I can center. If you click this though, don't do it with everything selected because everything's going to be centered within the page. Okay. I want everything. And this is where I'm learning with you because for some reason, how did I not? Let me go over to type. For some reason, it's not showing up on my toolbar, but I'll find it in a minute. All right. I'm just going to move this up. Make sure all my green bars are aligned. There we go. Okay. So this to me looks good, but I want to see it without all these bounding boxes. See all these blue lines on it and the purple lines, it just gets confusing. If you select W on your keyboard, that'll show you the print preview. So again, I'm going to hit W just to show you this is your working box. So this will show you where all of your text frames lines are, where all of your image frame lines are. But if I just want a quick preview, you can just hit W on your keyboard. No command, no shift, no nothing, just W. That'll show you that this is what the poster will look like once it's ready. Something else is on some InDesigns, if you open it at first, if you go up to View and you go to Display Performance, some may be on typical display, which means if you have a lower resolution image, it'll look really blurry. But if you go up and you hit on high quality, it'll sometimes change that quality of the back to show you the program's going to run slower because it's now showing you the high def image. But it'll also show you, okay, this is what it's actually going to look like once I go to print. Okay. All right. Well, I think we're pretty much good in here. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I guess I can show you really quickly what like I'll show you what a text wrap would look like, and then I'll show you what happens if you need to relink an image, and then we can go ahead and export it, and then we can go to questions. So for some reason, say I want to add a little black box here for no reason other than just showing you. Say it were an image or something else, but just for aesthetic purposes, I wanted to add a black box. You could select, open up your text wrap tool, and you would select the black box and then your text, and you could do this, which means that it'll evenly divide your text around whatever the image on top is. This is if you want to wrap it around an object. So say that was a circle, then I'll just show you a circle because it'll actually probably work a lot better. Okay, created a circle. Then you can see it actually just goes around the bounds. Instead of with this, it goes around the actual square bounding box with any kind of image or shape. This will go around the edges of a particular shape. So not these edges, but whatever is black. So that's just the purpose of text wrap, just to show you. We're not using it in this example, but it is handy to have is your text wrap tool. Always make sure that you have your text box and whatever you want to wrap it around selected, and then you can select these options. And when you select them, you can then say, I want to have more space around the object, between the object and the text. This is some places where you could wrap those. And so we will hopefully get into that into our 102, which will be later on this semester. It's a little bit more in depth, but just so that you're aware that there is a tool for that. There's that. Okay. You remember how I pulled my image from this folder? Say you then have moved the image within your desktop, within your computer, and when you open back up the InDesign file, you see this little red question mark above your image. That means that the link is now missing because you moved it within your computer. You need to relink that before you print, or else it will not be good quality. Sometimes the PDF will show up and it won't have the image on the background because the image is no longer where it was when InDesign went to pull for it, so it doesn't know where to look for it. So easy fix. Say I moved it from my desktop into the folder, vice versa. You'll just click on the red so that it's around, so that you have the bounding box. You can either click on the red question mark and it'll immediately pop this up where then I will just search for that image. And so let's go down. And there it is. And I can hit open and it'll relink that image. Or you can go over to your links panel and you'll see, because sometimes if you have multiple images, it'll just show you that you have one error down here on the bottom of your screen, and you won't be able to tell which image is missing. You go over here to your links panel, it'll show you this is the one that's missing because it'll have a red question mark. You'll just double click it. It even tells you double click to relink. You'll double click. I'll find it on my desktop again and I'll open. And there you go. This is just in two different ways to look at links. But again, you always want to make sure that you have your links. Now, say you don't have a folder on your desktop. How I think most people, if you're creating a file, you should have everything in one place in one folder just for organization purposes, but so that you can always go back and find that image later if you need it. But say you don't. We're done with our thing. We're done with our thing. There is a way to package your InDesign file before printing where it'll put everything that's in this document from fonts to images into one folder when you export it. So I'm going to go up here now that we're done with our design. And if you want to double check anything, like for instance, you can just select everything that's on your page and go up here to align to page. Just to make sure, double check everything is aligned center. You can hit W again just to make sure. Okay, I think everything looks all right. Yeah, that looks good. So you're going to go up here to File, and you'll go to Save As. And for this purpose, I'm going to go InDesign Poster. All right, you've got a couple of options. Always stick with your document. I'm going to name this InDesign Poster. Hit save. It's now saved out like that. For print purposes, you're then going to go down and you're going to do export. You can go to export, and here are your different options. A JPEG is what probably most people know as an image. I don't highly recommend it just because with a JPEG, there's a lot of compressing that can be done. It's not going to be your highest quality. I'll say that. PNG is typically a little bit better quality. EPS is what you're typically going to use for things that need a transparent background, or if you're needing something to be made a lot larger than it is, and that's mainly out of Illustrator. It's not out of InDesign. So I always recommend saving this out as an Adobe PDF for print. Interactive is if you're just wanting to send it via email to someone as a PDF. So it's not going to be as high resolution. It'll be more of the display performance where it quickly shows up, not printing purposes. So email, again, you can do interactive if you want to just show someone the poster, but any other purpose, you'll do Adobe PDF print. The title is InDesign Poster. I'm going to hit save because it's inside that same folder that I want it to be in. And then this will pop up. This is where you can get into, you'll see your general. Down here on marks and bleeds, we used bleeds on our page. So there is a checked area that's used document bleed settings. That'll basically be where when we save out this PDF, it'll show the extra space on the edge, and you'll just tell the printer we've saved it out with the bleed settings. Crop marks are also good to have if you have a large bleed. So this is when I save this out, it'll also show the printer where technically the bleed should be cropped at. Most printing agencies are going to want you to have bleed and crop marks on your page. And if your document is already set up to 0.125, then you're good to go. So you can just have these selected. Again, if you're just saving this out for the purpose of showing someone, You could save it as a PDF interactive. You could save it out as a JPEG, PNG, and you don't need these bleed and crop marks because you don't want the person viewing it as a proof. For instance, if you say you need to send it to someone higher up in your department or someone you're working with for editing the content or the words on it or something, you don't want them to see the bleed and crop and be confused as to why the poster looks wonky. This is just for you printing, saving it out to send to the printer. So I'm just going to hit export. And then I'll open this up just to show you. You'll see that there are these lines. So that line, the smaller, is the crop mark of what the actual size of the document is. The larger lines are to show the printer this is where the bleed goes out to. So that's how much space that they have for their printer to move in, to do anything like that, so that the document, this image, goes all the way to the edge of those crop marks, which is about where my cursor is. Remember how I had said that there was a way to say you have images in 5 different folders within your computer, but you want to have it all saved into the same place? You can go down here to Package, and you'll hit Package. Publication must be saved before continuing. Save it now. Save. And this is where it'll say InDesign Poster Folder. You can copy over the fonts, the link graphics. Again, if you're doing this for any kind of digital publishing or anything, then it'll also have spaces where you can include hyperlinks, things like that. And in the exporting of this package folder, it'll include a PDF print in there for you to have. So I can hit Package. And now within your folder of everything else, or just on your desktop, if that's where you save it, it has everything that is within the document. So any links, which is just one image, any fonts that you used are now included if you need to send this to somebody else to work on. And there's your InDesign document, and there's your PDF for them to look at. Yeah. And as Victoria just said, yeah, it's great to use if you're passing it off to someone else in another department or something. And so say, I'm working on this, but I wanted Dr. Smith in economics to be able to look at it. If he needs to open the InDesign document to change any text before he sends it to the printer, if I'm not the one printing it for him, packaging it, make sure that he's able to open up the document without losing anything within it. He can use the same fonts, he can use the same images, anything like that, and it won't lose quality, they won't be unlinked anymore, and it'll still be accessible for him to then send on to printers. So yeah, that's a great point. But yeah, I know I was kind of all over the place with that, but if there are any questions that we have right now, I want to open up the floor. If there's anything that you want to see that's on the basics of 101, we can do that. The option tool. Option tool. Can you, sorry, Cassandra, can you give some context? The option tool, which one? Or does anyone know? Option tool. Not sure. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm trying to figure out what tool that would have been. I'm sorry if I mentioned something and didn't do it. That's my apologies.
Kelsey, I have a question. Just because, oh, someone I think wrote.
Oh, the option button on the keyboard. Yes. Okay. That makes sense. Yes, so when you are selecting something to then duplicate it, you'll press Option on your keyboard, and that's when the double arrows show up. So you'll just click on this box, hit the Option. I think it's Alt, maybe. Is it on Alt click for PC? Okay. And that is where you can duplicate a specific layer or text box. I'm so sorry. Yes. So yes, it's your Option or your Alt button.
Kelsey, I have a question. Just because when I got started in InDesign, I did this a lot. Can you speak to why it's important to always, even if I'm creating something for print, why it's important for me to save it as an InDesign file, but then also export as a PDF? Why I want to have that original InDesign file saved? Because I know when I started, I would create something, export as a PDF, never save my original InDesign file, and then I, can't edit again.
Well, and that's exactly why. And so it's always important, and you'll hear terms if designers are asking you for, can I have the original file? That sometimes confuses people. By the original file, most people are meaning, can I have the InDesign? Can I have the .psd Photoshop, the .ai Illustrator file? Because that is the editable working file. And so you always want to make sure that no matter what steps, so say even I make this poster and a month down the road, Dr. Smith wants me to change the date on this to the 12th. If I want to still have this backup, I want to save that out as a completely separate save as InDesign to then say InDesign poster _12. You always want to have your original editable file because, say, printing comes back and is having an issue as far as crops and bleeds, and then you need to make changes. Or say your client comes back at the last hour and has changes. You'll need to have that file for that because a PDF is just not, it's not going to be the original file. So you're going to run into issues as far as that. Does that kind of explain?
Yeah, I think that's helpful. Just because I know in the past I would get stuck with I would export the things out of PDF, and then I would try to go back and change it, and you can't open the PDF in InDesign and edit the text or change the text, and stuff like that.
Okay. Okay. So I just saw, I think, a question. Okay. What's the difference between an InDesign markup and InDesign document? What should I use to make edits and data merge? So InDesign markup is the IDML version. That's a really good question, actually. I always just save it out as the INDD file. I've never really used the InDesign markup. I know that it's pretty much the interchangeable. I know they're pretty much interchangeable. I think it's that, isn't it that IDML can be opened up across multiple, like say I saved this file out in InDesign InDesign 2020. And then, but the previous CS for Creative Cloud was like InDesign 2018. They're not compatible to open. And I think IDML opens across those because the language, it'll just convert stuff. But I'm not exactly sure. I actually would like to look that up if that's okay, if we have a moment.
Yeah, go ahead and look it up. I think that's right. And then data merge and make edits. You can data merge in just regular InDesign file. I believe you have to go to Window Utilities and then merge your data, and then you can still make edits. But yeah, I think, Kelsey, I think you're right. I think that's just a way to ensure that a file that was saved in a different version or an older version of InDesign could be opened and the language could be read. But you can make edits and merge data in just a regular IDD file.
Yeah. this just talks about a lot of backend stuff, basically, that the IDML document contains the metadata, formatting attributes, layout properties, multimedia content objects. I don't know. It says it can be, the IDML file format supports applications for multimedia content creating and editing. So maybe that is when you are creating things for the, like, for instance, in the digital publishing, that's pretty much the only thing I could think of at the moment as to maybe why. Yeah, that's a really good question.
I had one more question too, just because I know I use this all the time. Can you show us how to spell check?
Okay. Yes. Okay. So say I have semester review and I don't have anything as far as the automatic spell check on, but I'm ready to print and I haven't caught that. No. Edit, and you'll go over to down to spelling. You'll go to check spelling. It'll immediately find that and it'll give you suggested corrections. So I'll go back and do that again. We'll go to, you'll just have your document. You don't have to have anything selected. You go over to edit, down to spelling, and check spelling. You can have, I think, autocorrect turned on at all times, like during working. But I tend to not do that, especially at UA. We have some fun named buildings or last names that are not traditional. And that's just, it runs into a whole different ball game when you have autocorrect on, similar to a phone. So I do not have that on. But yeah, you just go to check spelling. I know semester is the word that I meant to do. So I would click on semester and then I would hit change. It changes it to semester, hit done, and that's spell check. Sorry, that is a really good tool. I didn't think about that. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, if we don't have any more questions, I guess we can wrap it up. Kelsey, thank you so much. This was so good. I actually learned stuff that I have not thought about or like haven't used in a while. So it was nice to have a refresher. Kelsey's actually hosting a 102 session for us later in the spring. You can check it out on oit.ua.edu/events. And instead of building a graphic poster for us, she's going to show us how to create a multiple page document that's really great for things like annual reports or book printing or magazine printing. So be sure to check that out. It's going to have a lot more in-depth information with adding text and doing things like that. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to email me or Kelsey. I'm sure she'd be happy to ask. And we're so happy that you were here today.
Yes. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much. Have a good afternoon.
Bye.